Hello and welcome to or back to my channel. My name's Gabrielle and today I have a special tutorial for you all which goes over how to make this amazing cardigan. And this one is perfect for like springtime or fall because it has these holes that go throughout it, so it's like good for warmish weather but you still want like a layer. But it's not going to be like a really warm cardigan if that's what you're looking for, because we're using treble crochet stitches, so they're nice and loose. So I actually made one for my mom with this amazing yarn. It's the brand True Boo. It's made out of like bamboo and I found it at Michael's. But I got an order for someone and they wanted theirs to be cotton, so I made this tutorial using that yarn and it still came out the same, so you can use whatever yarn that you want. Also, I wanted to show you guys these really adorable buttons. I used really small ones for this first one, and then for the second cardigan I made, I used bigger buttons. So that just made the collar a little bit bigger. So without further intro, let's get into the video. I also highly recommend this yarn. Alright, so for this tutorial, you're just gonna need a few materials. First, some sort of yarn. I'm using 100% cotton, and here's all the details. I have 8 skeins of this yarn. Then you're gonna need some buttons, of course scissors, some sort of stitch marker. I just use a safety pin, a yarn needle to weave in your ends, and this hook is a 3.25mm hook. I just want to use a really small hook for any ribbing that we do. And then for the actual part of the cardigan, a 3.75mm crochet hook. Also some thread and small needles for sewing on the buttons. Alright, so let's get started. We're going to start on the back piece and at the ribbing on the bottom. Alright, so let's use our 3.25mm crochet hook, and then with the end of your yarn string, we're going to make a slip knot. So wrap your yarn around your fingers and make a cross on the back. So again, that's just like wrapping around, have a little cross right there. Then I just like to take my hook, weave it under that first strand, pull that second strand right through, and just keep pulling it up while holding the two ends of my yarn. And that's my slip knot. After you have your slip knot adjusted to your hook size, then we're going to chain 11. So to chain, you're going to yarn over. So bring your hook around the front, down, and back side of your yarn to yarn over, and then you're just going to pull right through the loop that was on your hook. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so here's my chain of 11. And now we're going to make single crochets all the way down the row, skipping that first stitch. So we'll have 10 single crochets in total. So we're going to skip that one that we just did, and then we're going to go right under the second one right here, insert our hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull our yarn underneath that loop. Then yarn over and pull through both loops that are on your hook. So that's our first single crochet, and we're going to go ahead and make 9 more of those all the way down. So insert your hook into the next loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And I'll meet you guys back when you're at the end of your row. Alright, so this is what my little project is looking like so far. Go ahead and count the V's on the top. Make sure you have 10 in total. You don't want to miss that last stitch. It can be tricky. So once you've done that and you're at the end of your row, go ahead and chain 1, and then we're going to turn our work. And then for the remaining rows, until we get this to be a length of 22 inches, we're going to be working only in the back loops of these V's. So what I mean by that is each stitch has 2 sides. We have this back side and this front side, and we're just going to be making single crochets into those back loops. So as you can see, I'm skipping over that front one and I'm going right through the top to go through that back loop. Then yarn over and finish your single crochet as normal. So continue this all the way down, only going in the back loops. This is going to create the ribbing that we see. And this is actually all that we're going to do for the remaining part, is we're going to go into the back loops. Then when you reach the end of the row, you're going to chain 1, turn your work, go down the back loops, chain 1, turn your work, go down the back loops, and continue that until your width here increases to 22 inches or however long you want your back panel to be. So I'll show you guys with this row and then I will let you guys finish it on your own. And this is the last stitch, which can be tricky to see. If you're a beginner, you might want to just count, make sure you have 10 stitches after every row. Then chain 1, turn your work, and repeat. So start going down the next row. And I'll meet you guys back when you have 22 inches of this. Okay, so I finished my ribbing. It is 22 inches long, as you can tell over here. Okay, so I just counted and it was 118 ribbing rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anyways, all the way down. In case you're wondering about that, but just make sure that it's about 22 inches long. And for the back panel, we're going to do treble crochet stitches all the way down, and then we're going to chain 2, turn our work, treble crochet stitches all the way down, chain 2, turn our work, treble crochet stitches all the way down for 26 total rows. So I'll show you the first 2 rows and then you guys can continue on your own. Okay, so once you have finished that, we're going to chain 2, and also I'm using now my 3.5 millimeter hook. So make sure that when you're making your treble crochets, you're using your 3.5 millimeter hook instead of the hook that you used for the ribbing. Okay, so to make a treble crochet stitch, we're going to yarn over twice. So yarn over once, and then just go around again. And this is what it should look like. And we're gonna make 1 treble crochet stitch into each row. So for our first row, right in here, yarn over and pull through, and then we work kind of like a double crochet stitch for the rest. So we yarn over and we pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops again, yarn over, pull through the final 2 loops, and that is a treble crochet stitch. So then we're gonna work another treble crochet stitch into the next row. So yarn over twice, insert your hook into that next row, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And to figure out where to go in your ribbing, I like to put 2 treble crochet stitches in each value. So 1 on the right side, 1 on the left side, 1 on the right side, 1 on the left side, 1 on the right side, 1 on the left side, and just do that all the way down. And on this first one for me, I just put 1 on the side because there's only 1 row of the valley. Okay, so to continue, yarn over twice, insert your hook into that next spot, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first 2, the next 2, and the last 2. So continue this all the way down and I'll meet you guys back for the start of the next row. Alright, welcome back. So I've gone all the way down with treble crochets and I bet you guys have too. So I'm at the end of my row and we're just gonna chain 2 so that we can, so that's like about the height of our treble crochet stitch. And then we're gonna turn our work to the left and we're gonna work into these holes on the top of our treble crochet stitches all the way down. So yarn over twice, then insert your hook into that first little hole, yarn over, pull through, and you know how to finish your treble crochet stitches. continue in the stitch to the left. So we're just making one treble crochet stitch into each stitch all the way down, and then when you reach the end, chain 2, turn your work, repeat all the until you have 26 rows, or until the cardigan is long enough to go from your neck down to wherever you want it to end. I'll meet you guys back when you have made 26 rows of this, and we will start working on making space for the head little collar area. So I'm gonna try to explain this next part as best that I can. I made one of the front side panels so that you can see kind of what the decreases have a purpose for. So here is my 26 rows. It's pretty long. Here's my ribbing down here at the bottom. I'm back at the corner where we left off. I have chained 2 and turned my work. Now I'm just going to make 37 double crochets, and then I'm going to stop. I'm just going to stop at some point, and I'm going to leave the rest alone. I'll meet you guys back when I've made 37 treble crochets and are ready for the next row. Alright, so I just want to show you guys how far along that I went. So I only went from this corner to right here. So less than half of my back panel. So that's 37 treble crochet stitches. And then for this final row of the shoulder, chain 2, turn your work, and then we're just gonna make one treble crochet decrease along this inside where our neck hole is going to be, basically, is what we're making. So yarn over twice, insert into that first stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, insert into that next stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first 4, come out, you should have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the last 3 stitches, loops. Then make one treble crochet stitch into the remaining stitches until you get to the corner. So I'll meet you guys back when you have made it back to the edge. Alright, so this is what my shoulder is looking like. So there's one decrease up here, and I'm back at my corner, so I'm just going to chain 1 and cut this off. However, I am going to leave a tail because we're going to be sewing this together. So just make sure that your tail end is longer than this length up here. I would add probably about this much extra. Or just to be safe, you could just double kind of like the length that you're using with your strand. Then we're gonna come over to this right corner and we're gonna repeat this because, I mean, we do have 2 shoulders, so we kind of have to. Start off with a slip knot, then attach your yarn by, you guessed it, a slip stitch. So insert your hook into that first stitch on the top row, yarn over, pull through, and through the loop on your hook. Chain 2, then put a double crochet, treble crochet into that first stitch that you did your slip stitch in, yarn over, pull through 2 times 2 times 2, and continue making your treble crochets until you have made 37, just like the other side, and I'll meet you guys back. It's so exciting because now we can kind of see like where the head is gonna go. I love it. So after you've made your 37, you know the drill, chain 2, turn your work. Then we're gonna make our decrease because our decrease goes on the side where we are gonna have our little head to make a circular shape. So yarn over twice, insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, insert your hook into that next stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the first 4, yarn over, pull through the last 3, then yarn over twice, insert your hook into the next stitch, complete your treble crochet, and put 1 treble crochet all the way into each stitch all the way down to the edge of the row where we're going to tie off our work. So I'll meet you guys when I'm there. Alright, so I have completed my row and I hope you have 2. So chain 1, pull up your work. Remember to cut off a nice long tail for sewing and pull it all through and pull it tight. Amazing. Congratulations on finishing the back panel. I'm very excited to show you guys how to sew the front panels and the back panel together. But first, of course, I have to show you how to make the front panels. Right after I show you how to make the front panels and you whip those 2 things out, we get to start sewing the cardigan a little bit together, and then we can add on the sleeves, and then it's really coming together. So we actually are almost there. The back panel does take quite a bit of work because it is the biggest panel that we need for our cardigan. But next I will show you guys how to make one of the front panels, and you're just going to have to make one more after I show you. So as you can see, we did the ribbing. You take your length of the ribbing that you did for the back panel and divide it by 2. So I did 50 here because my back panel I did 100. Then you do 14 rows of just treble crochets all the way along. There's of course 50 treble crochets, the same amount that I have in ribbing, for 14 rows. Then when you get to row 14, you can see that it starts having 1 decrease on one of the sides all the way to the top. And that's how I get to my 36, and then we can sew those all together. So I'll show you guys how to make this, don't even worry. And then I'll show you how to sew everything together. Alright, so let's use our 3.25mm crochet hook. Chain 10, chain 1 more, so a total of 11, because that one's going to be the side of our first row. Into the second chain from the hook, which just means if you count 10 from the starting, or if you skip that 11th one, make a single crochet. Continue putting 1 single crochet into each chain all the way down. Once you have put a single crochet all the way down your chain, chain 1, turn your work, and then into the back loops, put 1 single crochet into each stitch. So as you can see, I skipped that front loop and I went into the back loop. Continue this all the way down. Once you've completed that row, chain 1, turn your work, and repeat the last row until you've made 50 rows in total, or 1/2 of the length of the original ribbing that you did for the back panel, because we want this to be 1/2 of that length. My back panel was 100 rows of this, so my 2 front panels each will be 50. I'll meet you guys when you have completed as many rows as you need. Alright, so once you have finished the ribbing, change your hook back up to the 3.5mm hook, insert that into your little loop you have, and chain 2. So next we're going to put 1 treble crochet stitch into each row. So you should have 50, or if you did a different number of ribbing, that same amount of treble crochets as rows that you have here. If you're having trouble knowing where to put your treble crochets, don't worry. So you're going to want 2 in each valley. So 1 on the right side, 1 on the left side of each of these little valleys going down. If you have yours started off in the middle of the valley like me, you know that you just need to put 1 into that top row. And again, I'm just going like right into that top part, but it really does not matter. So continue making treble crochets all the way down, 1 in each row, then double check and make sure that you have 50 or your different number, and I'll meet you guys back for the start of the next row. Alright, so I finished my row of treble crochets. Like our back panel, we're going to chain 2, turn our work, then make treble crochets into each stitch all the way across. And you're going to repeat this until you have 14 rows if you have done everything the same as me, or if you have a longer cardigan or a shorter cardigan, then just make sure that you do this for half the number of rows that you have done for the back panel. because for the second half, we're gonna put decreases on one of the sides so that we can make a nice V neckline. So continue making your treble crochets. At the end of your row, chain 2, turn your work, and repeat. And I'll meet you guys back when I'm at row 14 and you guys have made yours up to row 14 or half the length of your back panel. Alright, so we have a total of 14 rows, and now we're going to put one decrease in each row, always on the same side though. So to make a treble crochet decrease, yarn over twice, insert your hook into that first stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over again, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, then yarn over and pull through the first 4 loops, yarn over and pull through the next 3 loops. Then just continue like we were doing, with one treble crochet into each stitch until the end of this row. Then for the remaining rows, you're going to chain 2, turn your work, and continue as normal until you get back to this decrease. And then for those last 2 stitches, you'll put a decrease. But don't worry for now, just put your treble crochets till the end of the row and I'll meet you for the start of the next row. Alright, so now I'm at the end of the row, chain 2 like usual, turn the work, and so our decrease is all the way over here, so we actually have to put treble crochets all the way down till we get to it. But for the next row, when we chain 2 over here and we turn our work, we'll see we're right next to the decrease, so we'll actually put one immediately, just like we did for the last row. So continue making your treble crochets all the way down until you get to that decrease. And with the final 2 stitches in this row, we will put our decrease. So you're basically going to repeat this process of always putting a decrease on this side, always on top of another decrease until you have 28 rows. Just so you guys remember, we're trying to make a V neckline. So that's why we don't want to put any decreases on the opposite side, because we want a nice straight V line and we want a nice straight up line to sew together with the back panel that we don't want any decreases for. So make sure there's always no decreases on one side and always a decrease on the opposite side. So basically repeat the last row and this row over and over until you have 28 rows. Or if you have a different length back panel, then make sure that you do this for the same amount of rows that you did the first part of this panel for. So say you made 30 rows total for your back panel and half of that's 15. Make sure you do 15 of no decreases and 15 with decreases. Alright, so now that you have 2 front panels and 1 back panel, we're actually going to start sewing those together so that we can get everything ready for the sleeve to begin. So get out your back panel and lay it out. If you prefer one side or the other, figure out which side you want to be the inside of the cardigan and lay it face up. I do not have a preference, so any side works. Just lay it out, make sure all the corners are out and it's nice and flat, because we're going to start laying. And take these threads and put them to the side, because we're going to be needing those. And then get your front panels, and then you want the straight sides to be with the straight side or the edge of the panel, and you want the curved side to be along the chest line. So you can see here that this is where my V starts. So then the other panel, we're gonna want the V to be this way. Perfect, so now we have room for the head and the neck. So now we're going to take our needle, and this is not a crochet hook, this is the needle, and then we're going to find the corner with our long thread on it, or if you don't have that, just cut off a piece of thread, because we're just going to sew along the top. So I'll show you. We want to sew the edges together right here along the top of our panels. So go into the first stitch of the front panel corner and then find the first stitch of the back panel corner, like so, and put it on your needle, and then go from the front, pull through the back. Then move on to the second stitch of the front panel, and the second stitch of the back panel, front to back again, pull through. And make sure that you get that thread to lay right onto the top. And pull it tight. Then find the third stitch of both panels, like so, front to back, pull straight up and tight. Continue this all the way until you reach the other edge. And this is going to be before you get to the curve for the V neckline and everything like that. You should have the same amount of stitches on the front panel and the back panel around the shoulder area. And just in case you guys want a zoomed out version of what everything on my desk is looking like, this is how it is laid out. So we have the ribbing at the bottom, and then we have the V-line. So we're really just sewing this top part together along this side, and then we're gonna repeat the same thing from where our extra thread is on this side corner and thread it all together till here and tie a knot. So do that for both sides, but I'm just gonna continue doing what I've been showing you, and I'll come back to show you how to tie a knot in case you do not know. And then we'll work on sewing up the sides to create a room for the arms. So I'm sewing the last two stitches together, and I just want to show you how I tie my knots. So I thread through like normal and pull it through like normal, but not all the way. So I'm gonna leave a little loop here that I haven't pulled all the way through, and then I just thread my needle through that loop, and then I pull it tight. So just like when you tie a knot for anything, you kind of want to do that twice or maybe even 3 times, just to make sure that it's nice and secure. I'm just gonna do it 3 times because this is an order for somebody else and I don't want them to have it fall apart on them. If I was making it for myself, I wouldn't really care that much. Okay. Also, if you do have a thread here and that was confusing to you, you can just tie a knot with the thread also. So that is how you tie a knot. Then feel free to trim off the yarn, but leave some room, of course, to weave in your ends later. And then repeat this whole process of just sewing the top to the collar area closed and tie that knot with the other side. And I'll meet you guys back to show you how to sew up the sides for the sleeve part. All right, so the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna place a safety pin along the last row that we want to have our armpit in. So basically this is gonna be where our arms will start. And then everything down here will be sewn together. So place your safety pin wherever you think you want your sleeves to be in circumference. Yeah, that's the word. So that they're baggy enough for you. You don't want them too tight. You want this to be nice and loose and comfy, or that's what I want. So I placed mine on the 12th row down. So we will start sewing all the way up to the safety pin from the ribbing. And then whatever you choose, make sure that you do the same thing with your safety pin on the other side. I'm counting on the first one and putting the safety pin through, and then I double count again on the second one. Just so that I make sure that it's the 12th row on both panels. So next what we're gonna do is get some of our yarn, and then you want this to be about 1.5 times the length of whatever you're sewing. So for me, I'm using about 3 feet. So that's it, folded in half. Then thread your needle, and I'm going to twist my work so that I just have my armpit over here and both of the ribbings down on this side. So I'm just going to thread my needle through the corners of both panels, the front and the back panel. And then pull my yarn pretty much all the way through until there's like a little bit left. This is annoying. So here's how much I have left, and I'm just gonna tie a knot. Both threads are the same one that I'm tying. So now that it's all secure, and you can even do that a third time if you are interested, we're ready to sew. So just like we did with the top panels, we're gonna go front to back, first stitch of the first panel, first stitch of the second panel, and sew. Then move on to the next stitch, and continue this all the way down until you get to your safety pin. And of course, the ribbing stitches are going to end and it's going to turn into rows. So I like to just sew the chains together, but I'll meet you guys back when I reach the rows and show you like where I put my needle in case you're curious. Alright, so I made it to the rows, and you just want to make sure that on both sides everything's lined up, so you're on your first row for both of the panels. Then, as you can see, each of these sides kind of has like a little bump or a chain, so I like to just go through those bumps, kind of just stabbing randomly. It's not really very precise. So as you can see, through some bumps, pull it through, and I like to do 3 or 2 sometimes of these per row. So moving on to a next area I can stab through, and preferably you'll find 3 areas to stab per row. That is how I kind of do my rows, and as you can see on the sides, it'll just kind of make them look a little bit thicker, but nobody will really be able to tell, and it might actually just look like a seam, which is supposed to be on the side anyway. Then continue just stabbing through bumps and everything as you make your way to the safety pin, and fasten off with a knot, and then repeat the same thing on the other side and the other armpit, making sure everything is identical to what you're doing on this side. And then I'll meet you guys back to show you how to start crocheting the sleeves. So exciting. Alright, so to start off the sleeves, make sure that your work is turned inside out so that the seams are nice and less visible, and lay out your work the way that has been laid out. And then go ahead and pick up the side where the sleeves are. So here's like my hole for my sleeve. And I'm gonna go ahead and make that where I'm working. The rest is irrelevant. And this corner down here where the armpit is, up here is where the shoulder is, but we want where the armpit is and where it's connected all the way down the side. That's where we're gonna start our first row for the sleeve. My sleeves took me 20 rows to make it long enough for my arm, but of course this is different for everybody, so just know that we're gonna be working for a while, quite a few rows, for the sleeves before we add the ribbing. And what we're gonna do is make a slip knot and put it on your hook, and then insert your hook right down and somewhere right along the seam and the armpit area of the sleeve. Then yarn over and pull through and through the loop on your hook. So make a slip stitch. Then chain up 2, and go ahead and make a treble crochet into that same stitch that you made a slip stitch into. Continue making treble crochets all the way around the sleeve. So to do this, we're gonna be putting about 3 treble crochets into each row. So put 2 directly in between, so in this little gap here. So yarn over twice, insert your hook right under through here, yarn over and pull through. Again, this is not going through any stitches, it's just in this hole. Yarn over, pull through 2, 2, 2. So I'm gonna count this first treble crochet as one of the ones for this row. So then my last one for this row is gonna go right here into this little circle. Of course, you guys can do this however you want. Just make sure that you end up with about 70 treble crochets. That is if you did the same size hole as me. And you know, more or less depending on however many rows that you have left for your sleeve. Then for the next treble crochet, put 2 treble crochets into this gap, and then for the third one, go into this little hole that's available, or anywhere that you can stab through. So far this is what my sleeve is looking like. Continue working, placing 2 in the gap and 1 in the hole. That's how I prefer to do it, but if you have a different way of doing this, go ahead. This really will not matter that much. Just make sure that you have enough treble crochets. And since each treble crochet stitch is about 3 chains high, that's why we're doing about 3 per row. So continue this until you reach the place where we started, and I'll show you guys how to continue on with the sleeve. Alright, so I just got back to the beginning, and as you can see, I ended like this, and I'm just gonna go ahead and stick my hook into that first treble crochet stitch, and then I'm gonna make a slip stitch, then chain 2, turn my work. That way I'm working the opposite direction. And then I'm just gonna make treble crochets into each stitch all the way around. Except I'm gonna be putting a decrease every single row, the first 2 stitches that I make. Make a treble crochet decrease by yarning over twice, inserting your hook into that first stitch available, yarning over and pulling through. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch available, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through the last 3. So that is the first and only decrease of this row. Then continue making normal treble crochets all the way around. Then I'll meet you back for the start of the next row. Alright, so I finished my row, so I'm just going to find that first stitch. I'm going to make a slip stitch. Then, like we did before, chain 2, turn the work, which is getting a little twisted. Then, of course, we're going to start off with our decrease. So yarn over twice, insert into that first stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over again, insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, yarn over, pull through the last 3. Then continue with your treble crochets all the way around. Continue making treble crochets all the way around. Repeat these rows because they're all the same, just making 1 decrease at the beginning, finishing with all the treble crochets until you have about 20 rows, or until when you try on the cardigan, the sleeve is long enough for a 2-inch collar to be added to the end and for it to fit nice and perfect. So until it reaches about the end of your wrist. Alright, so let's use our 3.25mm crochet hook. Once you have slip stitch to join and chain 2, we're actually going to end up chaining 9 in total for the ribbing. If you want your wrist part to be taller or shorter than this, then you can chain more or less. So here's my 9. Then we're going to make a single crochet into each of those 9 except for the first one, because that's going to be the side of the first row. So we're going to have 8 actual total single crochets, skipping that first one. So you can count from the bottom up 8 if you don't know where that would be. And then insert your hook into that first stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook, and that is a single crochet. Insert your hook into the next loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook. Repeat this all the way until you have made 8 single crochet stitches. Alright, so I just finished my 8th single crochet, and now we're going to attach our little end here to our wrist part. So you're going to go into the next available stitch and make a slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and through the loop on your hook. That just joined it, but now we're starting our next row, so we have to make 1 more slip stitch. Yarn over, pull through, and through the loop on your hook. Turn your work. So that second one is like a chain 1 basically. Then you're going to skip the 2 slip stitches that you made and go into that third V, and only in the back loop. This is the ribbing part again. So yarn over, pull through, and through the 2 loops on your hook, making single crochets only the back loops all the way down. You should have 8 total. If you're confused where to start, you can count from the left side 8 stitches in and make a single crochet into the 8th stitch. Or skip the first 2 slip stitches and go into that 3rd V from the right side. Continue making single crochets going through the top and only into that back loop. That way you get a ribbed pattern. At the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and again, make 8 single crochets, back loops only. So now we're going to join with slip stitches to our work. Since we already made a slip stitch into this stitch, we're going to go into the next one. And this time we're going to make 3 slip stitches. So every other time, make 3. So the next time we'll only do 2, this time we're doing 3, the next time we'll do 2, then 3, then 2. This is because it's going to make our circle a lot smaller and actually like fit our wrist. Otherwise it would be still pretty loose and baggy. So that just helps make decreases. So skipping those 3 slip stitches, we're gonna go into that 4th one and make our single crochets. So you should have 8 single crochets total every time in the back loops only. When you get to the end of the row, chain 1, turn your work, and 8 single crochets all the way down. When you get to the end, only make 2 slip stitches, turn your work, 8 single crochets to the end, chain 1, turn your work, 8 single crochets to the other side, 3 slip stitches, and repeat that. So every other time you make slip stitches, it's 2, then 3, then 2, then 3. And I'll meet you guys when your ribbing goes all the way around the cuff. So it'll end up going all the way around, and I'll show you guys how to end off with the ribbing. All right, so my ribbing finally made it all the way around, and I'm kind of at the bottom part, but this will work if you're at one of the top ends too. You're just going to put the 2 ends together so that we can crochet along the top. So again, we want our crochet to be on the inside part. So we're gonna fold our work towards us. And you can tell you're doing it right because when you unfold it again, where your hook is and all of your work will be on the inside. Okay, so try to line up all your stitches. So my stitches are lined up, and now I'm going to stick my hook through the first stitch on the first panel and the first stitch on the second side, and then make a single crochet, then go into the next stitch, make a single crochet, and continue this all the way down. Then chain 1, pull up your work, and of course cut through that loop that you pulled up and pull tight. Then you can unfold your work and see some amazing ribbing for the end of the sleeve. Repeat this on the other sleeve as well, and in fact the whole process for the other sleeve. So you're going to want your 20 rows and then your ribbing, and I'll meet you guys back when you're ready for the collar and you've got your buttons with you. So next we're going to start the collar, and my buttons are a little bit bigger than the last ones I used. So last time my collar was 5 rows wide, and if you're using smaller buttons, you can definitely make yours like 5 rows wide. But I'm making mine 7 rows wide so that it kind of fits the button size here. Anyways, this is important because the middle row of the collar that we do is gonna have the holes for the buttons. So if you're making your collar 5 rows wide, then that third row, that middle row, is gonna be the one with the holes. And for this one that I'm doing, which is gonna be 7 rows wide, the fourth one is gonna have the holes. So that's why this is important for you to know. So, in order to start, we're all gonna do the same thing for either the first 2 or first 3 rows, depending on how wide you want the collar to be. We're gonna make a slip knot, and again, this is with the 3.25 millimeter crochet hook, the same one that we used for the ribbing around the sleeves. And we're just going to start it at the bottom of the ribbing along the front of the cardigan. So insert your hook into that corner, that first stitch if you can find it. Make a slip knot. So yarn over, pull through, and through the loop on your hook. And chain 1. Then make single crochets all the way down until you get to where the ribbing stops, and I'll show you guys how to continue. Okay, so once you reach the treble crochet portion, remember that each treble crochet is about 3 stitches tall. So we need to put 3 stitches per treble crochet as we make this first row of the collar. So you can just go ahead and go into the gaps if you want, or you can try to go through the stitches. I'm just going to go through the gaps. So I'm going to put 2 single crochets just right through the gaps here. Then in that for my third stitch for that treble crochet, I'm going to go into the actual like hole that is showing, but you can just make a third one to the gap if you want. So that's the first one. For the second one, 2 more in the next gap, and for the third stitch, right into that hole that is open right there. So continue this all the way until you get to the row where the decreases start, because we're going to want to add some increases around there, so I will show you what to do when you get there. So just keep making your stitches until you get to the part that kind of curves towards the shoulder. Alright, so when you get to the stitch where there's the first decrease, you're just going to add a second single crochet into that stitch. This is going to help the bend just go better. And then when we get to the corner over here, we're going to make a decrease. So that's why this is important, because it's going to help put some curves in the right places. So this one we want the curve to go like this, and for our decrease, that's when the curve goes inwards. Anyways, I don't want to confuse you too much, but then just continue as normal, putting 2 single crochets in the hole of the stitch, and then add 1 into wherever there's like a little hole for you to add a stitch. So as long as there's 3 stitches per treble crochet, it doesn't really matter where you put the single crochets. And then continue working as normal until you reach this inside corner part right here. You'll probably be able to feel it's like where the back panel kind of starts. Alright, so I finally made it to where the back panel starts, and just so this is what it's looking like. And now I'm going to add a decrease into these 2 stitches right here. So insert my hook, yarn over, pull through, insert my hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then continue as normal till you get to the last 2 stitches of the back panel, and I'll meet you guys back to show you when to do that other decrease and continuing along our collar. Alright, so as you can see, my next straight line is starting soon, so I have 2 more stitches left of the back panel. Insert my hook, yarn over, pull through, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. So there's my decrease at that next corner. And now we just move along and repeat the same thing with this side, where we put 3 stitches into each treble crochet row kind of a thing. And then once we get to where the decreases end, we add a little increase. So I'll meet you guys when you get to the last row of the decreases, which will be about halfway down this front panel, and then that's where the straight line is. So we just continue until the decreases stop, add a little increase, and then continue down the rest of the row like normal. And so I'll meet you guys at the spot of the last row of decreases. Alright, so this is the first treble crochet I have that does not have any decreases. So I'm gonna go ahead and add an increase into this area. So 1, 2, and then add 3 and 4. Add the final 2 stitches for that treble crochet. Then continue like normal with just 3, not 4 stitches per treble crochet row. And I'll meet you guys at the end of this row. Alright, so at the end of the row, chain 1 and turn all of the cardigan, all of the work. We're almost finished, guys. Then for some of you, if you want the collar to be the same size as the last cardigan in my video, or you just have like smaller buttons than me, this is going to be your last row of just normal single crochets, not worrying about the holes. So you just put a single crochet into every stitch all the way around, put an increase where we had our increase last time, and a decrease where we put our decrease last time. for both sides of the collar. And if you're doing the same color as me, which is 7 rows, then that's what we're doing for the next 2 rows. So until we have 3 rows of this. So just do this for as many rows until you want to have holes down the middle. And I'll see you guys when you're ready for the holes. Alright, so here are my 3 rows, and now it's time to plan out all the button shenanigans so that we can do the 4th row with the holes, or whatever row you're adding the holes to. So the first thing that you want to do is place your safety pins where you want your buttons to go. So I'm starting my buttons at the top before our decreases. So the last kind of row before the decreases is where I'm putting my first button and my first safety pin. Then I place my last safety pin. So I basically find where I would put a button for it to like fit. So don't put it all the way at the bottom because then your button's gonna come off like this. Go up for the center of the button will make it look nice and pretty. So for me that was like 4 stitches up from the bottom. Then what you wanna do is count how many stitches are from the bottom safety pin to that top safety pin. And then also figure out how many buttons that you want to be on your cardigan. I have 5. I need to divide, so then I want to count how many gaps that 5 buttons gives me, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 4 gaps. So 5, take your number of buttons, subtract 1. So for me that's 4. 5 minus 1 is 4. Then take the number of stitches you have and divide that by your number of buttons. So I had 50 stitches and I had 4 gaps. So 4 goes into 50, 12.5 times. So between each of these safety pins, I count up 12, 13, 12, 13 to get like 12.5, you know? And that is the placement. So basically take that number of stitches you have, divide it by the number of buttons you have, but minus 1. And then that'll tell you how many stitches to count in between each of the safety pins to space them out good. Also, I placed all of this on the right panel. That's because the buttons we're gonna end up sewing on this side, and this is gonna be the side with the holes. So usually buttons are on the right side and the holes are on the left for women's clothing, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, so my thread is attached to the side with the holes, so I'm gonna like go through how to do that first. But if your thread is on this side, this just depends how many rows that you do and everything. Then make all of your threads like normal, all of your stitches like normal, until you get all the way around the neck and you get to where your safety pins are. And when you get to your safety pins where your safety pins are, it's gonna be the same process. I'm just gonna be coming from the bottom side, but you're gonna come from the top side. It's gonna be the exact same thing. All right, so to start, chain 1 and then make your single crochets like normal until you get to the stitch with the safety pin. So I'm just making my few stitches. And then you want to be able to see, like, you want your button to fit through your hole. So for me, my button looks like it's about 4 stitches wide. So I'm actually going to see if it will fit through a hole of 3 stitches, just because I don't want it to be too loose, you know? So my safety pin is gonna be in the middle of those 3 stitches. So basically I have 1 stitch before the safety pin stitch, and 1 stitch after the safety pin. So that's 3 stitches total that I'm gonna be skipping. So then in order to skip them, but still like continue along my journey, I'm gonna chain 3 rather than single crochet 3. So there's my chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then in the 4th stitch, make a single crochet. So there's my little hole. Now I'm just gonna test and see if my button's gonna fit through that. So if you need your hole to be bigger or smaller, chain more or less, and then just test to see if your button will slide through that or not. So for mine it does, but you also don't want it to be too loose, so be aware of that. Okay, so this worked for me, so I'm just gonna continue single crocheting until my next safety pin. So I'm actually at my next safety pin, but I'm again skipping the stitch before the safety pin, the stitch with the safety pin and the stitch after the safety pin, because those are the 3 stitches that I'm not making single crochets. I'm making my 3 chains instead. Then into that 4th stitch, make a single crochet and continue this process. So single crochet to the next safety pin. Okay, chain 3. So that's when I got to the stitch before, the stitch with the safety pin and the stitch after the safety pin, and then single crochet into the 4th stitch. Then continue single crocheting until you get to your next safety pin. Chain 3 when you get to the stitch before the stitch with the safety pin. And again, chain however many you have, or, you know, this is individual depending on the size of your buttons. And then single crochet into that 4th stitch. Or if your buttons are smaller, maybe it's the 2nd stitch, maybe you just have to chain 1. Also, leave any questions you have in the comments. I would love to help you. It's hard to teach people that aren't right next to me because I cannot see what the struggles are, what the clarifications need to be. So let me know in the comments and I'll do the best I can to help you. Then single crochet to the next safety pin. For me, that is the last one, yay. And then of course, when you get to the stitch before the safety pin, chain 3, then single crochet into that 4th stitch. And for me, that kind of skips over where the increase is. So I'm just gonna make sure that I put that increase back in there next time when we come back around for the following 3 rows. Then just continue as normal, making your increases and decreases where I showed you before, going all the way around the cardigan, and I'll meet you back to show you how to do the next row. Alright, so I made it all the way around to the end of the ribbing, and for the next row, chain 1, turn your work, and continue doing the exact same thing that we've done until you get to the holes, so that way I can show you how to kind of work with the holes being there. And then after this row, we'll have 2 rows of the same thing. So go ahead and put 1 single crochet into every stitch until you reach your first hole, also continuing to put the increases where we've been putting them and the decreases where we've been putting them. And I'll meet you at the first hole. Alright, so here I am at my first hole. So this is the hole that's at the bend, so I need to add an increase. So instead of adding, so I chained 3, so I needed to add 3 single crochets into this hole. However, since it's on the increase, I'm gonna add another one, so a total of 4 single crochets in this hole. And I'm just going right through that hole, turning over, pulling through. So those are my 4 single crochets, and then I'm just going to make single crochets into all of these stitches down to the next hole. And again, you might want to double check to make sure that one of your buttons can fit through the hole, and mine can. Alright, so I made the last single crochet, and now I'm approaching the next hole. So I'm going to add 3 single crochets into this hole. If you chained more or less, like say chained 2, then only add 2 single crochets. If you chained 7, add 7 single crochets. Then continue repeating this until you get to the end of the row. And then what you're gonna do is just chain 1, turn your work, repeat, adding 1 single crochet into each stitch and adding an increase and a decrease where I showed you. So do that until you have a total of 7 rows, or if you're doing more or less rows, the appropriate amount. And I'll meet you guys back to show you how to finish off with this collar and then how to sew on the buttons. Okay, so I've completed my 7 rows. We have 3 below and 3 above each of the holes. And now it's time to chain 1, pull up the yarn and cut it off. Now we only have to sew on the buttons. We'll want the buttons on the opposite side of the holes. Probably place the safety pins once again exactly where we want the buttons to be. So go ahead and put the safety pins exactly across where they need to be. All right, then just make sure that these are lining up with the holes, because that would be bad if they weren't. So far, mine's looking good. And I'm gonna go ahead and get a smaller needle than my yarn needle, because my yarn needle does not in fact fit through these holes. Okay, so I found some thread and some smaller needles. Thread the needle. This is probably the hardest part of this tutorial. Is that through? Yeah. Then cut off arm's length-ish of thread and go into that middle, so that fourth row in my case, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up through right across where the safety pin is. So, and then in the middle, and then go up through one of the holes. Pull your yarn, pull the thread through, but not all the way, because we want to tie a knot when we go back down through. Hold your button where you want it to be, and then go down through the other hole. And if you have 4 holes, then alternate all 4. Then on the back side, tie a knot. And I like to tie mine 3 times just so it's triple secure. And leave enough room so that you can weave in these threads. So that is still pretty loose, so we want it to be extra secure, extra tight. So go back up through the holes again, down through the other holes, and just continue to repeat this process until you feel like your button's secure. Alright, so to finish this off, we need to tie a knot. So when your thread is in the back, go underneath one of the stitches like this. Pull your yarn or thread through, but not all the way. So leave a nice loop for yourself. Alright, so here's like a loop, and then go through that loop with your needle and then pull tight. And then just repeat that again, going through the same stitch and maybe even a 3rd time. So pull it through but not all the way, leave a loop, go through that loop, pull it tight. I'm gonna go through a 3rd time. The last thing to do is weave in the ends. So definitely sew on all of the other buttons, but I'm going to show you while my thread is threaded. You're just going to go underneath all of these other stitches throughout the back. Definitely try to weave in the ends through the back side just in case any pokes out a little, it won't be visible from the outside. And then once you've gone through several stitches, you can push that needle all the way through and pull it tight. And then you can cut off any excess. And of course, kind of to give a little tug to make sure everything's secured. Repeat that even with the normal threads going through the stitches and pulling snug. And I'll meet you guys back with a finished cardigan. So add on all the buttons, weave in all your ends, and I'll meet you guys back. Thank you everyone for watching this tutorial. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more videos from me. And let me know in the comments what other tutorials that you would like and any questions that you have. Alright, I'll see you in the next video.